Hi everyone, I'm Sandra from the Cherry Heart podcast, and I'm here today just to talk to you a little bit about how to read charts and to give you some very basic information on them to get you started. The first thing to say about charts is that they are just a crochet pattern. It's just a visual version of the crochet pattern instead of a written pattern, which you might be more used to. So any pattern that you follow is going to tell you which stitches you need to use and where you need to place them. So a written pattern will do that by using abbreviations for the stitches and telling you where the stitches should go and what to do. And the chart just gives you exactly the same information, but it does it in a visual way. So it uses symbols to tell you which stitches to use, and then it shows you what to do by actually laying them out as they need to be. So they can be really useful if you prefer to work visually anyway, so they can help you see what you've got to do in a clearer way, but they can also be useful even if you prefer written patterns. They can be a nice little backup to sort of check you're on the right track if there's anything you're not sure of in the written instructions. Sometimes just a quick look at the chart so you can see what you're trying to do can just be really useful. So that's the main reasons why I really love charts. But I think something that puts a lot of people off is that when you look at a chart for the first time, you're getting an awful lot of information, and I think it can be difficult to know where to start. It looks quite overwhelming at first. But it's really the same as if you sort of tried to read an entire written pattern in one go. You know, if you had 3 pages of patterns and you tried to take in all that information in one go, you wouldn't be able to do it. So it's the same with charts. You're seeing everything, but if you just take a minute to have a look at it and break it down, actually it becomes quite simple as well. So the first thing to understand about charts is the symbols that are being used. So I've got some very basic examples here. So let's have a quick look at some of the common symbols that would be used in charts. So I've got a little key for us here. You quite often get these with charts, a little guide to show you which symbols they've used to indicate which stitches. And although these can vary, there is a kind of generalisation. They're generally standardised, so you can sort of see the very similar symbols being used again. But here's some common ones for you. So we've got the little dot here indicating the slip stitch. We've got a little circular oval shape to indicate a chain. And then for a double crochet or a US single crochet, it normally takes the shape of a cross. So either an upright cross or one that's like an X on its side. Either of those symbols are very common. And then most of the rest of the symbols are like capital T's. So a half treble or a US half double is just like a capital letter T. And then the most common, the treble or US double, is a capital T, and it's got a little bar across. And what these symbols are trying to do is to be a simplified version of what an actual crochet stitch looks like. So the T is the top of the stitch, and the bars are how many sort of strands of yarns go across the post of the stitch. So in a treble you have one going across. Let's see if I can show you on an actual treble. So that will be the top of the stitch, just here, and that sort of line of yarn going across is represented by the bar going across here. And so as the stitches grow in height, you tend to get more bars along here. So a double treble in the UK or a US treble has 2 bars, because you'd have 2 wraps of yarn before the top bar, the top of the stitch, sorry. And a triple treble in UK and double treble in American terms would have 3 bars. So it's just a visual way of showing you what the stitches are going to be. So let's have a look at an actual chart. So we begin by looking at a chart that's worked back and forth in rows, and you can see at the bottom here, we've got a row of chains, which we'll recognise as a starting chain. We've got a turning chain at the side, and then we've got a number and an arrow. So the arrow is showing us that those stitches are going along this way, and we've got a number for each row. So 1, 2, 3. So each number corresponds to a row. So you can see, even if you're left-handed or if you're right-handed, you're going to be working, the chart is going to be following symbols from a different direction. So whichever way you are used to working your actual crochet, your eye will have to get used to following symbols in either direction. So that's the same for everyone. So let's have a look how this compares to our actual piece of crochet and see if we can recognise that hopefully this is looking like a simplified version of the actual crochet that we can see here. So we can recognise from our key that we talked about earlier, our treble crochet symbol, we can recognise those there, but we've actually got them in groups of 3 here, and they're just meeting, their posts are meeting at the bottom there. And if we look at the crochet, and we know from a granny stripe that 3 trebles, that's exactly what they do. There's the 3 of them, and they're all being made into the one place. So this chart is showing us what we have to do with those stitches. It's showing us that we should make them all into one place. You can also see I've got my starting chain down the bottom, exactly as shown here, and then I've made some chains at the side and made my first stitch. And then I've done groups of stitches just as it shows into one chain, and these chains haven't got any stitches coming out of them, and those chains I've missed out here too. So hopefully you can see that there is some resemblance between the finished project and the charts, and as you get used to sort of seeing these symbols and knowing what they mean, it's easier for you to sort of picture how the final object's going to look. So let's look at one in the round. So here's our chart that's worked in the round. Again, I've gone for a very basic pattern, so hopefully you'll be able to recognise it. And it's just a basic granny square, like this one here, although I did a few more rounds on this one. So again, we've got the same symbols, we've got the treble stitches, and they're being grouped again into a point at the bottom because they're all going to be worked into the same place. So for this one here, they're all 3 are pointing down to this chain. So you could see, and again we know from granny squares that we do indeed work all 3 into a chain or a chain space. So the only thing to remember if you're left-handed then is, because this is shown from the front, we need to follow the symbols in an anti-clockwise direction. So whether you're right-handed or left-handed, you'll still crochet in your normal direction and do whatever you normally do. You just need to remember that you'll be looking in this direction just to see what to do next. And again, we can see a chain that would represent the beginning of each row, and we can see we work round with trebles, chain stitches in the corners, and we follow it round and we finish with a slip stitch as well, which we're used to. So hopefully after you've had the chance to sort of look at it and see what the symbols mean and study it just for a little while, you can start to see the shape of what you're going to get emerge. So I'll just quickly talk about a couple of other features that you might come across on charts. So we'll look at this chart as another example. So this is the heart square from my new Nature's Walk crochet along. This is the square that we're making up first as a swatch. So I'll show you this because there's a couple of other elements here that it's handy to know for charts. So if we look at the key for this one, I've got a couple of other things on here. I've noted down that the little numbers mean a round number, but I've also noted that the start and end point. So the start is marked with this little filled in arrow or triangle, and the end is shown with a hollow little triangle. So that could be handy when you're sort of looking at a big chart and you know it can be hard to find the beginning, so it's good to have a little indication of where the beginning is, and also an end can indicate where the yarn will change, so that can be good to know as well. This chart is still quite simple. We can see that it's just for a square, and so it's quite easy to find the start of this one, so it's right in the middle here, and here it's telling us where the end is, where we need to cut the yarn. The other thing you might notice about this chart is that it's got two different colour symbols on it. It's got the black ones, as you've seen before, but it's also got the blue symbols. Now, in most cases on charts, that doesn't mean anything other than it's just a way to clearly indicate alternate rows. So when one row is blue and the next row is black, it's quite easy to see where the blue row ends, and then you can start on the next row in black. So that sometimes charts will be entirely in one colour, and sometimes they'll alternate like this. On this chart it's quite easy to see where the rows end because it's worked in the round and they're quite a uniform height, so it's quite easy to see where each row is. But on more complicated charts it can be really helpful to just have that extra indication. The only other time that colours are sometimes used in charts is it can mean a yarn change, a change of yarn colour, but normally that will be indicated on the chart, so normally it would say on there if that's the case, but I have seen that as well and I have used it myself occasionally. But yeah, so on here I've, just to make it clear, I've actually said that the alternating colours has just been used to distinguish each round clearly. So that's some basic information that will get you started. Hopefully the charts won't seem quite so daunting now that you've got that little bit of extra information. And then if you join me for the next video, what I'll actually do is we'll make this square together, and we'll just go through it step by step so you can see clearly what to do. And then hopefully if you're joining me on the Nature's Walk crochet along, I have charts for each of the squares that are to come in there, so hopefully if we go through this one together you'll be able to feel more confident about tackling the other charts by yourselves. Okay, I'll see you on the next video. Bye!